Ubisoft is the content creator's dream, the gift that keeps on giving, with the rakes that continue to get stepped on by a company that somehow used to be in the upper echelon of gaming pantheons, has fallen to being, I don't know how they're still in operation and not bankrupt completely. Pirate Nation on X, Yves Guillemot says Star Wars Outlaws flopped due to declining interest in the franchise. So now we now have the cope. This is extreme cope. We aren't the problem, guys. Dear investors, we tried our best. We really wanted to make this the best game we could, but these Disney people, they just ruined Star Wars so much that just nobody wanted to care about Star Wars anymore. Yeah, it's not us. This is something Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot was recently questioned about by investors during a meeting, where he stated, "Outlaw," and this is a quote, "Outlaws was released at a time when the brand that it belonged to was in a bit of choppy waters." And I would argue, yes, that is true, but that doesn't mean a fantastic game couldn't save the destruction of a franchise. It could completely revitalize it if it was good. I wouldn't say he's wrong, and definitely a factor, but he's also leaving the part out about how toxic his brand is at this point and how mediocre the game was at launch. And Insider Gaming, for the full story, they said Ubisoft CEO thinks Star Wars Outlaws failed because the brand was less popular. During a recent shareholder meeting, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot was asked several questions about the development and eventual release of Star Wars Outlaws. It's no big secret that the game didn't perform as well as expected, and in September, Insider Gaming exclusively revealed that the title had sold just 1 million copies in a month on the market, which, again, I covered that in a video when that came out. Completely mind-blowing. Now, usually people hear, a game sold 1 million. That's amazing. Like, why are you trying to knock this game? If this was an indie game that had a small budget and it had a few dudes working on it, and it was, kind of like a surprise success, yeah, sure, you champion 1 million sales. That's great. Good for them. That's super exciting. Star Wars struggled to get 1 million sold in 1 month. That is even in choppy waters of a franchise. That is unheard of for Star Wars. It speaks volumes for just how bad the game was. Talking about the issues that plagued Outlaws, Guillemot made a suggestion about Star Wars brand that hasn't sat well with some fans. "We didn't reach our sales targets. At a recent shareholder meeting, Yves Guillemot fielded questions about Star Wars Outlaws and how it hadn't turned around the results expected of it. The sales target weren't made clear, but whatever they were, Ubisoft fell far short of hitting them." To explain the downfall of Star Wars Outlaws, Guillemot first criticized the brand before talking about the game's technical performance, because, again, it's not our fault, it's someone else's. Of course, complete projection and cope for a failure of a game from a brand that should guarantee multi-million sales no matter what happens in the first month. For Star Wars Outlaws, we didn't reach our sales targets. The game suffered from a number of items. First, here we go. First, this is the real reason, right? First, it suffered from the fact that it was released at a time when the brand that had belonged to was a bit choppy waters. And the game had a few items that still needed to be polished. And they were polished and debugged in the early weeks. But it did affect sales volumes. Did it? Did it? Because if that's the case, then that means you should have delayed it to fix it, because you were working on this game for 6+ years. And then in 2 months after it launched, you fixed all these little bugs that caused it to suffer with sales. Sounds like you should have delayed it a couple months after 6 years or more working on the game. We did heavily improve the game by troubleshooting and debugging. And when it will be released on upcoming consoles, such as the Switch 2, it will be the new version of the game. So yeah, Yves Guillemot with a lot of cope and a lot of, oh, please believe me, it's not my fault that the game failed. It's Disney. It's Disney's the reason. I wanted to go back to Pirate Nation just to see what people are saying about it. Banderhud, declining interest in the franchise, including the need to use the game as a vessel for fixing made-up social issues, as well as creating a character that challenges beauty standards. That's a nice way to put it. Is the reason why it failed. Yeah, Kay Vest or whatever. Ironically, the same Ubisoft that pushes DEI everywhere takes the actress, who is actually pretty beautiful in real life, and makes her butt ugly in the game as the main protagonist. Why would you do that? What benefit is that? Pushing a social, political agenda to prop yourself up and get virtue signal points from your buddies at the golf club? Congrats. And Debian says, it's because Ubisoft made it. That's why it flopped. The game adhered to their game design, which is tired and overdone, which, by the way, I don't hear enough people talking about this portion of it, because this was my issue with Assassin's Creed Shadows, where it's just the gameplay loop just gets boring. There's very little variety. You just go from one area to the next and doing the same mission over and over again. Plus, they made the main character look weird when they should have just used the actor they cast. That's what I was just saying, in the role like they do for most games. And we got Kata, who says, meanwhile, Battlefront 2 this year hits its all-time peak. We have, yeah, that's totally not due to the fact the game is shitty. Nope, still love Star Wars, but damn, that protagonist was ugly. I don't want to play as a girl with a busted nose and shaggy hair. Nope, he's wrong. There is interest in Star Wars. Making the game bland with a retarded with retarded takedowns and beyond retarded AI made the game flop. Dude, man, the Star Wars Fallen Order series has been doing just fine. Maybe people don't want to play a crappy open world slop without anything cool, which, by the way, great point. Fallen Order did fantastic, and Star Wars was not in a great place when that came out. So what's the difference? Give us a cool bounty hunter or Jedi to play. Also, the game was buggy as shit on launch. Disney makes shitty Star Wars. Brand declines. Ubisoft gains rights to make Star Wars. Ubisoft also makes shit Star Wars. Blames the brand. BS, it flopped because Ubisoft went woke. If it had been a decent game starring a male smuggler, it would have sold much more. I agree with that. Either, and I know, I feel like this should be the game that every single game company, big or small, should point to forever. Always point at Star Wars Outlaws and say, we need to make sure that the protagonist is either a rugged dude or a hot chick. You cannot have a rugged chick. Don't cross the streams. You have to make sure that who you're creating the game for wants to buy and play your game. Yeah, people totally don't want Star Wars games. Yeah, right. I'm picking up the sarcasm. The more they cope, the more money they will lose. Fans of KOTOR 3, A New Republic Commando, and modern Star Wars RTS. Not this stealth action slop with Star Wars skin. Don't blame the franchise. So yeah, I mean, you see pretty general sentiment from everyone in the community, echoing exactly my thoughts on this is clear cope and lies coming from Yves to not the gamers. He's not trying to trick you because he knows he can't trick you. He's speaking this to the investors that do not pay attention to what the hell's happening and hoping they buy it so that they continue the investment money coming through to approve their next project. And hopefully, it wasn't our fault, so don't blame us. Keep investing with us. Keep giving us money. And the next time we totally got this, guys. We just learned from a little bit of mistakes. We'll definitely kick that can down the road 2 months later next time and delay it to make sure we fix those bugs. And then it will sell infinite. I think what it goes to with Ubisoft, all their games, and maybe this is just me, all Ubisoft games feel very samey. And I don't know how else to explain it except they just feel very samey, and not in a good way. Like Nintendo games, especially like the Mario franchise and stuff, feel very samey. But that's not a bad thing because the games are fun. They don't withhold stuff from the Mario games and make you charge $10 more to make it more fun. It's just in the game. And I feel like that's kind of the ultimate downfall. The reason why Ubisoft continues to fail is because they continue to make games very similar and continue to nickel and dime people for a game that, let's be honest, people could just as well play older Star Wars games, older Assassin's Creed games, or dare I say, play the backlog of games that are coming out right now or they've been waiting to play for years. There's no reason to rush out and play a Ubisoft game ever. And they continue to prove that every time they launch a game. But anyways, I will leave that one there.